So good day everyone. So I'm here again to discuss the part 3 of our e-learning methodologies covered creating interactive content for preparation of our content. E-learning content must be accurately prepared and presented in order to be effective. Instructional techniques should be used creatively to develop an engaging and motivating learning experience. While e-learning content can consist of different elements ranging from simple learning resources, example, documents, and PowerPoint presentation. So, to interactive content, simulation in job age, this part will focus mainly on the development of interactive e-lessons. Interactive e-lessons are the most common method for delivering e-learning content. They offer a medium level of interactivity and allow designers to use a variety of instructional techniques and media. I just want also to illustrate the process of developing e-lessons, including preparing the content, applying instructional techniques and media, and creating the final interactive product using appropriate software and, of course, the authoring tools. Now, in preparing a content, this video presentation provides suggestions to subject matter experts on how to prepare and write content for e-learning. It will introduce the following topics. How subject matter expert can provide the required information and knowledge, and of course, on how to write content for e-learning. Of course, and now, as what we have here, of course, with the entire e-learning methodologies, we adapted the ADDIE models. So our part 1 is analysis, part 2 is design, and by this time, development. Okay? Now, in traditional training, subject matter experts assemble materials for learners and teach them directly, while in e-learning, subject matter experts provide instructional designs with the information and knowledge they need to prepare e-learning materials and activities. So, for courses where domain-specific knowledge and skills must be developed, so example, for an e-learning courses on data privacy, of course, analysis and so on, subject matter expert must provide instructional designs with high-quality content. However, the extent of an subject matter expert's contribution can vary depending on the amount and quality of existing materials. In fact, no, it is very likely that a set of materials for a specific subject is already available. Okay? This can consist of the user's manuals and technical documentation, the classroom course handouts and lecture notes, presentations such as PowerPoint slideshows. Of course, we have documented case studies, okay? Photographs, images, graphs, tables, and illustrative materials. And of course, we have also training materials such as self-study guides, web guides, and other distance learning materials, and the reference materials such as specialized thesaurus and glossaries. This will be the another questions or always the questions I've heard from the instructor or teachers. Can existing materials be used without making any changes? Unfortunately, existing training materials and documents cannot be automatically transformed into e-learning materials by just making them available from a website. E-learning differs face-to-face training and requires specific formats. For self-paced e-learning in particular, material must be carefully designed and must embed adequate instructional support to allow learners to function independently throughout the course. So for example, a PowerPoint presentation developed for face-to-face training session is not e-learning content because it does not include all the explanations and examples which are supplied by the presenter or teachers in a traditional classroom, or a 20-page article made available online is not e-learning content because the way it is designed doesn't match specific learning objectives, and because scrolling text page is not the best way of reading online. Although preparing material is less demanding in instructor-led synchronous learning, it is still necessary to adapt existing materials to the new learning environment. I have here the two main situations can occur. If existing materials provide high-quality content sufficient to cover its outline a lesson, the subject matter expert may be required to provide linkages between existing sources materials and outline a lesson. So for example, chapter 1 of a manual on vulnerability analysis can be covered the content for lesson 2.3 of an e-learning course on, for example, data privacy analysis. The subject matter expert also required to practice exercises, question and feedback, and additional example were required by the instructional designers. Of course, glossary of terms and relevant descriptions, and recommended reading and resource pointers for the lesson or lessons. Then after that, the instructional designers will develop lesson storyboards which integrate content taken from different source materials with practice exercises and example provided by the subject matter expert. But if existing materials do not adequately cover the content of outline lessons, the subject matter expert be required to provide core content for the lesson which ensures that the learning objectives of the lesson are adequately covered. Of course, practice exercises, questions and feedback, and additional example were required by the instructional designers. Glossary of terms and relevant descriptions, and recommended reading and resource pointers for the lesson. For this scenario, the instructional designers will develop lesson storyboards which integrate lesson content, practice exercises, and examples prepared ad hoc by the subject matter expert. Now, I have here the tips for content development and language style. When subject matter experts are in charge of developing content for e-learning lessons, they should refer to the course outline or the course plan to be informed about the topics to cover and the approach to take in illustrating those topics. So, example, level of detail, the language to use, the preference for illustrating concepts through examples or case study. With those instructions, subject matter experts can begin to write the content. Now, I will give you the tips for content development. Okay? So, before developing the content for the assigned lesson, review the proposed learning objectives. Number 2, make sure that the content and knowledge assessment test and exercises match the lesson objectives at every step in the workflow process. Number 3, provide all the knowledge needed to meet the learning objectives, including information that may seem obvious to you but may be unknown to learners. Use examples that are likely to be familiar to most. if not all, learners. People taking the course may have different backgrounds, so use a variety of example, and this will help learners understand and remember the concepts. Of course, classify topics for each lesson as follows. Must know, a core part of the content. The learner needs to understand these concepts. Nice to know, the learner could get by without this information, but it could help develop better understanding of the subject or the course or add interest for the learners. Authoring content for a lesson is not the same as writing books or scientific articles. So the following tips on language style could be useful to subject matter experts when authoring content for a lesson. How about the tips on language styles? Take note, no? Write directly, simply, and clearly. To accomplish this, keep sentences short. One rule of thumb is that a sentence should not be longer than 25 words. It is important to not give the reader more ideas or information than can be handled at one time. Of course, avoid jargon. If you are addressing a multicultural audience, avoid cultural specific slang, colloquialisms, and examples. Be sensitive to the fact that many learners are not native English speakers. Write as you talk, and informal language in construction, don't, were, can be used. Minimize the use of compound sentences. When you see a colon or semicolon, examine the sentence to see if it could be made simpler and clearer by breaking it into shorter sentences. Use personal pronouns, you, to refer to learners. This personalizes instruction and involves your reader. Use bulleted list when appropriate. And observe or use gender inclusive, not sexist language. Over the years, men have continued to use non-renewable resources at increasing rates. Gender inclusive, instead, over the years, people have continued to use non-renewable resources at increasing rates. Also, use the active voice. In a passive construction, the agent of the action often disappears from the scene. Use the passive voice only when the active voice is unduly awkward. Don't forget to spell out acronyms in full. The first time they are used, consider adding them to a glossary if appropriate. As what you've heard earlier, I am directly or spelled out the word SMEs or the acronym SMEs into subject matter expert and ID as instructional designers. To summarize, of course, the key points for this discussion, there are two main ways in which subject matter expert can provide the knowledge required for an e-learning course. Again, number one, they can provide instructional designers with references to source documents and materials, and they can actually write the content for an e-lesson. In either case, they must check the storyboards and provide additional information where needed. For example, they might provide feedback on exercises or complete examples in scenarios created by the instructional designers. Content development is based on the course or curriculum plan which describe learning objectives in topics to be covered. In authoring the content, take note of it. Subject matter experts should provide all the knowledge needed to meet the learning objectives and avoid necessary information. I mean unnecessary information. The language should be direct, informal, easily understood by diverse people, and culture and gender sensitive. So, I think that's it for today. Don't forget to like, share, comments, and subscribe. Thank you so much. Hashtag DocMelo, the author. God bless everyone.